right, welcome everyone to this week in Svelte, episode 95, as you might have seen in the thumbnail, which absolutely I did not made myself because Kevin, not Kevin, sorry, Karim is out. Unfortunately, he's a bit sick. So yeah, I had to improvise and I did what I could. I hope you liked it anyway. So today is an early version of this weekend's Svelte. It will also be like a quieter version. We'll just go over the changelog because I have to leave at 4. But yeah, let's jump right into it and let's see what this week in Svelte brought us. There are a couple of fixes. Allow const tag inside key. This was actually something that was asked a long time ago, and even for Svelte 4, and the issue was initially closed by saying, yeah, now it's working in Svelte 5, and in reality it was not working, and so the issue was opened again, but then basically it was left unattended. Sometimes happens. And by the way, if you are if you raised an issue on Svelte and you see that it's basically staling, nobody's looking into it, at least I don't want to talk about the other maintainers, but at least please feel free to tag me, because I want to fix as much as possible, and I don't care about being tagged but sometimes it's just you forgot about it, so don't worry. The other thing is remove unnecessary nullish coalescence on some expression. I think we also looked at something similar last week, but basically we adding since now if you have a null value or an undefined value in the template, in Svelte 4 it was actually printing out null or undefined. Now it's actually printing out an empty space, which means that we added a bunch of nullish coalescence, but sometimes they're not necessary because you can know that some expression will never be null, and so we removed it. Correctly override class attribute with class directives. I think that this was, let me see. Yeah, okay. This was a bit of an interesting PR from Adiguba, which again is one of is contributing a lot, and because it's interesting because basically before in the code base, class directive, so class colon something and normal class were basically handled separately, which was also quite hard to wrap your hand around while you were working on something similar. So it was very easy to introduce bugs when you were working, for example, on the class directives and you were breaking the contract with the class. And so you were overriding something and then you moved it, and then when you moved it, it was not overriding anymore. So it was pretty rough, and I actually never touched the code base since this PR was merged. But if I'm not mistaken, this should be quite an improvement in terms of developer experience for the maintainers, because it's basically now inside a single class, so it's actually better to deal with that anyway. Let's move to 5.20.4. Fix update types and inline docs for Flash Sync. Flash Sync is something that I think a lot of people are actually not aware of. It's not published, it's not really a famous feature of Svelte. But Flash Sync is actually, we are using that a lot in test, because basically allow you to force an update before, you can basically set some state, and then if you flash sync, instead of running in the next microtask, it will run immediately. So by the next line, it will have run all the various effects and derived and stuff like that. And I guess this was just like types and inline documentation were wrong, and this was fixed. Then we have a kind of a juicy release 2 days ago. Allow double hyphen CSS selector names. This was fun because basically the issue, like they raised an issue about this, and I was about to fix it, and then I noticed that we were actually following the spec, and so I closed the issue. But then we realized that actually we were following an old spec, and so with the new spec, you can actually have double hyphen CSS selector name, and so we actually fixed it. It was pretty easy to fix. Class directive not working with REST props. This is kind of a consequence of the class thing that I was talking about. And probably like I feel like there are like we might see some other bug like this in the future. For example, this is also another bug related to that class directive, not because Ariba didn't do a good job, but just because, like, again, as I've said, this was pretty complex before for a reason, and now it's simpler, but obviously like there will be some small consequences. I think like maybe now it might be all fixed, but if you notice something weird about class and class directive, please report so that we can fix them. Catch error on cost tag in Svelte boundary in dev mode. This was also interesting, but basically up until before this moment, if you were throwing an error inside a const tag in a Svelte boundary, the error was not catched by the Svelte boundary in dev mode because the const were outside of the boundary actually during the compilation. So this was fixed. Allow for duplicate var declaration. This is something that like technically you can do, like you can declare var x is equal to 43 and var x is equal to 44, for example, in JavaScript. And it was not possible to do in Svelte just because while we were analyzing the scope, if we found something like this, we were erroring out. But I suppose like it's better to be more strict and be more in line with JavaScript, so that's why we fixed it. Again, this is another small bug that come from the class directive thing, and it's also it's when you are using a call inside a class to prevent calling the function over and over again, we use a derived. But to create this derived, there is a mechanism for the template effect, and that should have a first argument, which is $0 that then you can use inside the template effect. But yeah, it was not passing the argument back, so now it's working. And I have a question here, which is usually when you use $0 in the browser, it's the currently selected element in the debugger. Is that just a coincidence? Yes, it is. That is just something that like obviously Chrome and whatever like console implementer decided to do. This is just because it's the first argument of the function, and so we just use $0 because it's the first argument of the array of the things that needs to be, of the expressions that need to be derived that we pass in to the template effect. So it's just a coincidence. And that's it for Svelte. Let's switch to SvelteKit. We only had one release, which is fix avoid simulated course issue with known HTTP URLs. So I think that I'm not entirely sure, but I think basically like we are probably simulating course errors in some situations, but with known HTTP URLs, course is not a problem, and so it was throwing wrong course errors, and now it's not anymore. Correctly preload links on mouse down, touch start. I don't know why this, we can actually see this. Um, yeah, it will start ignoring a link the moment it was hovered on. This causes the link that only preload on mouse down to always be ignored, since a user mouse would hover over the link first, causing it to be ignored in subsequent mouse down event. Okay, so basically, like if you already loaded something, like if you hover over a link, SvelteKit is doing a preload. So when you hover over a link, and this is obviously configurable, when you hover over a link, it will start to preload both the code and the content of the link, so that when the user actually click, it can navigate very fast. And you can configure to also do that on mouse down, so that you can be more sure that the user actually want to navigate, because obviously, like if the user navigate over a link, it might not be the case that is actually clicking that link. Maybe I'm just moving over a list, for example. So it's useful that you can actually preload when you click a link. So when you do mouse down, it will preload. It will still give you a bit of an edge, like the network can start just a tiny bit before, and it might be enough for the navigation to be instantaneous. The point is, if a link has already been preloaded, we don't need to preload it anymore. And so we were basically on hover, we were stopping the preload from happening. But this means that when you clicked, it was not preloading because it was stopping the preloading, but not doing the preloading. So I don't know if that's the case, but it should be this. Load CSS when using server-side root resolution. So we talked about this a bit last week, but basically now there is a new feature, which is server-side root resolution, which means that instead of sending your whole root structure to the client, so that when we do client navigation, you can actually navigate and like SvelteKit knows what it has to load, you can do this by server side. So if you set root resolution to server, what it does is when you are about to navigating, it does a fetch call to fetch this information and then navigates. Obviously this adds a bit of a overhead, but it's basically the same trade-off of lazy loading a root or loading it up front. And usually lazy loading a root is preferable because like you get split, and if the user never navigates to a root, you never need to load that data. And this is especially useful when you have a very huge application, because instead of loading a huge chunk of manifest in the beginning, it will load like that thing root per root. So it's better. And there was a problem loading CSS because probably it was not accounted for. Correctly find shared entry point CSS file during inlining. Okay, so probably if you were using, when you were inlining CSS, if you were using shared entry point, it was not finding all the shared entry points. I know I'm not giving you much information about this issue, sorry. I'm just reading the title, basically. So, I'm sorry. Let me see, there is also another question. When using Svelte, I already managed to get rate limited by my proxy server because the user hovered over too many elements. Yeah, you can disable that that behavior. If you think, like if you have 1,000 links on the page and you know that the user will have a bunch of will hover over every single one, you can disable that thing and actually use mouse down, for example, so that you can be sure when the user actually is navigating to the thing. If a loader return a promise that lazy load a Svelte component, can it be rendered in page Svelte? Can you clarify this? So the point is, you can load a Svelte component from a universal load function. You can just import dynamically a component and return it from the lazy load. And if you do that, you can just you get the component as a prop and you can just render it inside your plus page.svelte. If you want to lazy load a component completely, you can just dynamically import and then use the await block. So I suppose yes. I don't know if this answers your question. If you can clarify it, I can probably answer. I mean, I don't know if I can answer, but I will try my best to answer. Let's move to other, because we also had a pretty big, so as you can see, there is a patch change to the CLI, which is use ESLint plugins Svelte v3, because this is pretty cool. We got a new major version of ESLint plugins Svelte. It's now compatible. It was compatible before with Svelte 5, but now it has some rule that is actually specific to Svelte 5, and obviously, it's better. Some rule has been removed, I think, but yep. We also have a make drizzle next step more precise. So when you are adding drizzle for the DB, for the ORM rather than the DB, the next step will be more accurate. Update add-on dependency allows selecting adapter auto, which is cool. Now the SV CLI, I don't know if you know, but it's to create a project, but it's also to add stuff later, and it's pretty cool because let's say that you started a project and you want to create a new, and maybe you want to add Tailwind, you can just do pmpx sv at latest add Tailwind CSS, and it will add Tailwind to your project. It's pretty smart. They are doing a wonderful job. Update ESLint plugins Svelte to v3, re-add Tailwind CSS plugin, and now we have ESLint plugins Svelte. Baseball Yama is doing a bunch of work. Valid prop names in skit page. Yeah, basically there are some we have changed the versioning policy. Drop support for all ESLint. So ESLint had a major change between v8 and v9, and so for a while ESLint plugins Svelte v2 was shipping flat recommended, and flat was to allow the spreading on the v9 version while still being compatible with the v8 version of ESLint, and now it was dropped. So now ESLint plugins Svelte is only compatible with v9, but you should actually upgrade to v9 because it's better. And yeah, so we have this. I think there are a couple of new recommended. So for example, this is infinite reactive loop to prevent you to reading and writing from inside an effect. No DOM manipulating, no dupe on directive. Use directive, export load in Svelte moduling kit pages. Require each key. This actually has bit me on some project. I could not update because I had to an each key without an each loop without a key. I think this is actually nice. In general, it's good to have a key. Sometimes can kind of beat you, but I think it's fine. Requires stores in it, required valid each key, and it's removed valid compile. And this was actually a rule that basically allowed, you basically will get an error, an ESLint error if the component was not compiling correctly. So yeah. Require stores in it was removed from the recommended rules. Yeah, now this is also cool. They are checking also .svelte.js files, which was not the case for ESLint 2. You had to add this by default. Deprecated the no go to without base rules. Deprecate not dynamic slot name, because there are no I mean, not there are no slot anymore, but like it's deprecated because it's going over the deprecation. Updated HTML self-closing rule to follow Svelte 5. Change the plugin to an ESM only plugin. Add Svelte 5 support to no not function handler. Consistent selector style. Add support for Svelte boundary. Add prefer const rule. No deprecated row special elements. Yeah. It's cool. Like as you can see, like it's a huge list. I think it was in the working for a while. We also got a new version of ESLint parser, which is the parser that generates the AST for the Svelte ESLint plugin to work. So minor changes here. Improve scoping of snippet declaration, add support for Svelte boundary, stabilize generics, and stuff like that. Add support for each without as. Yeah, okay. That's good. Some changes on the adapters, and that's it. So I think that's actually it for the changelog. Before we leave, I know it was like a pretty short stream this time, which is actually half an hour, so it's still like old This Week in Svelte length, and I'm very sorry because I know Enrico was pretty good at keeping time. I am not. Like I talk way too much, but I hope you appreciate. So I just want to give the usual announcement. Svelte Summit is happening spring 2025, May 8 and 9 in Barcelona, and there is also a workshop that I personally I will be running, and this is organized by my company, which is also co-organizing Svelte Summit together with Svelte Society. Very happy about this. So on May 7, if you want, so if you are booking some like flight and stuff like that, we will run at One Cowork Cathedral, and it's all about Svelte 5. So please join me. And obviously, like the guest star of the show, like the Svelte Summit, we have a bunch of speakers: Rich, Matthias, Scott, and we will see a bunch of stuff. I'm very hyped about it. I can not wait to be there with you all. And obviously, if you want to become a sponsor of the conference, you can have some nice logos inside here. And yeah, this is the venue. It's pretty cool, and it's full wheelchair accessible. I literally can't wait. I'm very, very happy about this. I cannot wait. Okay, guys, thank you very much. This was a quick one again, but I hope you still learned something and you still enjoyed This Week in Svelte. See you guys next Friday. Bye.